had me at Bigfoot.com. But like in reality, it's like a little slap of pickle.
Just slap a pickle.
Hey Siri, text Tom Miller and say fuck you.
911, what's your emergency? Yeah, this is Hank on Old Gray Road. What is it this time, Hank? It's Bigfoot again. He's back. He's just standing there.
You're listening to You Had Me at Bigfoot with your hosts, Tom. I did, as a cockles. My big cockles. And Dustin.
That is a penis. A little penis.
Joined in the studio, as always, by Ryan.
Can't mess with that stuff, dude. Take my word.
And Jim.
But I don't have that many friends.
Remember to check out our Twitter at You Had Me Podcast. Find us on YouTube, You Had Me at Bigfoot Podcast. Or on our website, www.youhadmeatbigfoot.com. If you could make a deal with a demon for anything, a Faustian bargain, as they're called, what would you want and what would you give in return?
If I could ask for one thing from a demon, it would be to make me wealthy, and I would give up my virgin anus for as much probing as they would want.
What if, for how long and for how many fingers?
I'm not sure how many fingers. That is a question that I am going to ask.
How many fingers do demons have?
To me, a demon's finger is probably pretty...
comparable to human fingers?
Yeah, but maybe rough. So it won't be gentle.
So how many of these ungentle, rough fingers?
Because an alien's finger is smooth.
And long? But these are probably
But they're like ham hock. Just little, rough little, like a mechanic's hands.
Except burnt, too.
And burnt.
They're burnt a little bit.
A little thorny in places.
And they've probably got a long nail on the end. Yeah. Are you prepared for that?
Well, as much anal probing as I've had done to me over these episodes.
Clearly, over the last 10 episodes.
I mean, I'm probably ready for it.
Your anal cavity is so calloused from aliens, from Wendigos, from Slenderman. All right, welcome to You Had Me at Bigfoot. Tonight is actually a very special episode. We have a guest tonight who reached out to us on LinkedIn, as it were, of all places, and he is actually a very interesting character who is what I would consider an expert in the occult and demonology, sorcery, wizardry, and the dark arts, the arcane arts, right? Is that what it's called? His name is Dave Outlandish, and but he's going to actually talk to us tonight about just demonology and the demons and the dark arts, and it should be a lot of fun. I think we're going to have a lot of fun. So welcome to the show, Mr. Dave Outlandish. If you'd like to kind of briefly just talk about what you do, give us like the Cliff Notes version of you. If you were coming into a room and I said, "Hi, I'm Tom, professional dickhead. I am really good at making paper airplanes." What would your introduction of yourself be as it pertains to why I asked you on the show today?
Well, I mean, I'm Dave Outlandish is my stage name. I had to make a stage name. My younger brother is a street magician. He told me that you had to have one, so I have one, Dave Outlandish. I'm an occultist. I study symbols and their meanings culturally. I'm a demonologist. I study demons and humans' interactions with demons. I'm a sorcerer. I sell spells and incantations to people so they can use them. Sometimes they want me to do them for them. I don't recommend that to them because I don't think anyone... I don't think it's more effective coming from me than them, but they insist. But first and foremost, I'd probably consider myself an artist and entertainer.
You have me intrigued over here.
I told you Dustin was going to be all pissed scared about having to deal with demons again.
I started messing with demons when I was young, when I was a teenager. I grew up in the Mormon church, and they have this priesthood program. Oh yeah, so they have a seminary program that they get into when you're a young teenager. And I was in the seminary program, and we were learning specifically about the miracles of Jesus and when he casts the demons out into the pigs, Legion.
Yep.
And so hey, that's pretty relevant, right? Like we don't have it. There's nothing in our Book of Mormon or whatever that talks about how we deal with demons. So like, I go to the bishop and I ask him, what's our official stance on demons? Because Jesus dealt with demons, right? So he ain't around anymore. They didn't give me the information I wanted. They didn't give me any information, which, I mean, I was probably 12, right? So I'm not sure I blame them for not giving me any information, but what it did do was cause me to go look up the Lesser Keys of Solomon, the Goetia, the Ars Goetia, and try to make contact with some of the demons, the entities mentioned in that book. And it did not go at all like I expected it to.
What happened?
Well,
Yeah, what happened? I want to know.
So a demonic experience is interesting. Now, I know some of you have probably had what you believe to be a demonic experience, right? And so when I was a teenager and I was engaging with these entities, I would regularly have experiences that I was 100% sure were real, I would regularly have conversations with entities that seemed, for all intents and purposes, to be present in the room with me, right? Now, these were likely hallucinatory experiences because there was no evidence that there was an entity in the room, right? There was no evidence that any of this stuff took place in a physical sense. But I was totally convinced. My five senses were 100% fooled. And that is the thing that we find in common with these demonic experiences, is that people may see things and they may hear things. They may have totally realistic and believable psychosomatic hallucinatory experiences. Now, does that mean that demons are real spiritual entities, invisible monsters, right? I don't know. Nobody knows. But what it does mean is that people are convinced all across the world in huge numbers that demons are real invisible monsters.
Wow. I have some questions. Actually, you've piqued my interest, and I have some questions. I've always been intrigued by these Faustian pacts.
You know what's funny is I was gonna say, if you want that Faustian pact, V, this is gonna be the guy to get some FaceTime with. He's gonna be the guy.
I want to know, like, what is that possible, and like, what do you got to do? And tell me, if I want to make a deal with a demon to sell my soul, what exactly? How does one go about that?
Well, that's actually a big part of what I do, is hook people up with demons who can probably help them with what they want, right? Because I don't claim to have any supernatural powers, Like, I'm not any more of a magical entity than any other person on the planet. However, I know a lot about demons, and I know a lot about magical symbols. I know a lot about what magic's supposed to do. Whether or not that's what it actually does or not, no idea. But the thing with pacts. Now, pacts are a really common trope when you're dealing with demons. And I think the reason for that is because if you were an entity like a demon, and you didn't have a body, you didn't have a brain, right? And you were trying to communicate with these other entities who they live in a totally different kind of situation as yours. You'd want to establish some kind of consistent value, right? So what a pact does is it's a way to establish a consistent value between you and the demon, right? So now the demon knows what's worth what to you, right? And you know what the demon wants. So once you've established pacts with the demons, now you guys are to a point where you could communicate, because now you can exchange because you have a set value, Until you do that, you guys can't really exchange anything, because what's valuable to you and what's valuable to a demon, you guys have really no idea. But so once you make the establishment of the pact, that's when you could start working together collaboratively.
What does one typically have to give up to make a deal with a demon?
Well, again, it's kind of a misconception that you give up anything, right? Like, so if a demon, what we know a demon is we know a demon is an idea. We know a demon is a set of characteristics and a set of descriptors for their behavior, right? That's what we know a demon is. It's an idea, right? They're these conceptual entities. Whether or not they're actually invisible spirit monsters or not, no one can really speak to. But what we do know they are is concepts. Now, what a demon isn't is a thing that has a body, right? A demon isn't a thing with a brain. It isn't a thing that can influence the world in the same way that a human can. So what we have here is a demonic interaction is a collaboration between a demon, which is a conceptual being, and a physical person who has a body, right? So if we were going to break this down in kind of basic esoteric terms, we could say that a whole person is made of at least 3 parts: the body, the soul, and the spirit, right? And then if that was true, then, for instance, for this analogy, a demon would just be a spirit, right? And so what you're trading in the pact is the demon spirit kind of interfaces with your spirit and therefore your body and your soul. So the demon gets to experience life, a temporal sort of physical reality, through sort of co-opting your consciousness. At the same time, you benefit from the demon's experience and a different point of view in your life as the demon interfaces with your consciousness, right? So what you're dealing with here isn't necessarily an entirely separate entity. It's more like the mind of an entity overlapping your own, and both of you together become a new entity. And that's the kind of stuff we see in the syncretic religions, like voodoo, where they call it riding. They go out, they do these rituals. They all get, real wasted and have this nice feast and party, which, if you read the Ars Goetia, there was the really elaborate feasts that you have to prepare too, right?
Can you say that? What was that if we read the what again? Can you repeat that?
Yeah, the Ars Goetia, the Lesser Key of Solomon.
Oh, okay.
So it was written by monks talking about how to conjure the 72 spirits that King Solomon used to build his temple. And it's these really complicated instructions on how to build these circles using the names of God and angels to protect yourself from these demons and stuff. And it's like, it's a whole really involved process. And then I'm looking at voodoo and I'm looking at Macamba and these syncretic religions. And they're just like, dude, have a party and the demons are going to come over and they're going to jump in your body and everyone's going to have fun. And then you're going to be gifted with some divine gnosis afterwards. And I'm like, why are these people don't really even care? They're not even trying to protect themselves against these demons. All they're doing is hanging out like it's a party. Whereas these monks over here, they're super stringent about where the circles are and what time, and if you've had a certain kind of meal the day before, and how many times you jerked it in the past month. And I feel like, and it's like, so instead of messing with any of that, I try to recreate more syncretic practices. And so we'll have parties and we'll do the drinking and then the debauchery, and that kind of stuff attracts the mindset necessary for these sort of friendly demonic interactions.
I don't want to, I have a million questions to ask, but you're on a roll, and I really like where you're going and what you're saying, and I want to know more about, really, and like I was telling you, I feel like I'm pretty learned on this sort of thing to a small degree, but what you just said has made me feel like I know even less than I thought I knew. You know what I mean?
Right?
This is all. Yeah. Wherever you were going next, I want you to continue to go there. You know what I mean? I want to stay on this same subject until, you're kind of tapped out on it. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, continue. I'm all for it too.
Okay, so a lot of the information that we get popularly about demons comes directly from Christianity specifically. I mean, the Hebrew and had a lot of these sort of demon legends and lore and stuff, but more popularly are Christian lore regarding demons, right? And if we look at these, we see that it's not just demons. So there's a lot of the times that you can trace the lineage of these demons back to gods or demigods or monsters from other cultures, right? I mean, this is a practice that everyone's aware of, that the early Catholic Church assimilated a lot of different cultures and took their gods and spirits and et cetera, and made them all into demons, right? And so what we're really looking at here is, how do we classify a demon, right? Like, if you go into a haunted house and you feel this real malevolent force and it feels oppressive and it's pushing down on you, and then you have to flee the premises, a lot of people would say that was a demonic encounter, right? And so in that regards, they're simply classifying the demon as something that is malevolent or sort of scary, right? Mm-hmm. Which I think is a misunderstanding of what a demon actually is. If we look back at the earlier definitions of the word, it comes from the genius daemon, which was the Greek concept. These genius spirits that would assist mankind, artists and inventors and mathematicians, and grant them inspiration, right?
I know a little bit about that. That's pretty cool. I've read stuff like the Spanish would chant "Ole, ole" because a dancer was overcome with a genius it was basically like a spirit that was giving them the ability to exceed human limitations and do something divine, essentially. I think that's so interesting. I continue. I'm sorry. I just want.
No. That's perfect. That's a great example, and we see that in almost every culture in the world, right? We see it. We see the concept of spirit creatures giving mankind knowledge or the ability to perform beyond human limitations. It's universal, right? And I think that a lot of the misconceptions that people have about demons are that demons by nature must be aggressive and malevolent. Now, we're looking at the accounts of demons by monks, though, right? So if you were a demon, say you were a real invisible monster demon, right? And you've been around for, I don't know, 1,000 years, a couple thousand years, maybe the beginning of the universe, who even knows, right? And then some dude in a tweed fucking robe, right, who hasn't jerked off for 2 months, tries to call you into his stinky ass bedchamber and command you to teach him about geology, right? Like, imagine, like, that's the situation that the Ars Goetia describes, right? It describes that you have this really elaborate ritual that has everything except for fucking piss-filled Mountain Dew bottles, right? And then you beckon these demons and you try to command them to teach you stuff, right? Now, I'd be pissed. If I were that demon, I'd show up as I'd look like the scariest Pokemon you could imagine, and I'd belch flame my ass until he left me alone, right? So I feel like it's the way that they were approaching these entities, which gave them the impression that these beings were super aggressive and evil and terrifying and sought the destruction of mankind because they were just pissing them off, right? I feel like if we engage the demonic respectfully, they are a lot more amicable and extremely sympathetic to the plight of humanity.
Yeah, and it seems like it would be a stigma on demonic stuff because, you know, all the religious organizations that just paint the picture of them. So there's a huge stigma. Now, that's interesting.
And that's not to say that demons aren't scary, right? So we have to separate dangerous and scary, right? Now, do I think that a demon is inherently dangerous? No. I don't think that a demon as a thing is something that you need to put a warning label on and, you know, watch out for. I don't think it's radioactive or poisonous or anything like that. However, is a demon scary? I mean, yeah. Either it is an invisible monster capable of manifesting itself physically in front of you and then telling you things, or it's a psychosomatic experience born from your subconscious mind that is so powerful that it can invoke full sensory hallucinations, right? So either it's just your mind being really complicated and crazy, or it's an invisible monster capable of magic. Both of those things are fucking terrifying, to be honest with you.
Right. Who's really to say either or is true or not, too, you know? Like, you can't really say for sure, so what's the difference, I guess?
Yeah, I mean,
you know what I mean?
So if you're 100% convinced that this entity appears in front of you and tells you some kind of, and gives you inspiration for your next artistic masterpiece, right, that you would probably have never thought of before, if you're 100% convinced that that happened, right, then, like, what's the difference between it actually happening or it being an intense psychosomatic hallucinatory event? You know, there's not a whole lot of difference. And so that's kind of what we get at when we talk about, when we engage people about demons, you know, people have possession events, etc.
So how, when you make a deal with a demon, how does the demon approach you? Is it you have a dream kind of deal or a vision, or do you actually have a freaking demon?
It depends on the person and it depends on the demon, right? I would say. Now, some people would argue that it 100% depends on the person because there are no demons. But if you do think there are demons, then it definitely depends on them as well, right? Sure. They typically, from my experience, will appear to you in an appropriate fashion, right? So if they want to make an impact, if they want to get your attention in a really overt and terrifying way, then that's how they'll get in touch with you. I've had people so I have a bunch of clients, and a lot of the things I deal with my clients are confidential, and that I can only give real vague details about them. When they come to me for help, it's not for something they're super proud of, you know? So a lot of the details are going to be real vague, but for instance, dealing with this lady who's dealing with the demon, and when she feels like it wants to get her attention, she will tell me that it's scratching on the door of a room, moving the door, moving the windows, moving things around inside her room in the darkness, so I get messages from her sometimes at like 3 o'clock in the morning.
I want to hear about some of your experiences. Do you have any any stories that you can tell us that are like maybe even a little exciting? I'm just they're great. I'm totally intrigued by this.
Let's see. Well, like I said, a lot of the work that I do for myself is either deeply personal and kind of weird, or the work that I do for other people is deeply personal and kind of weird, you know. But I used to work with a coven when I was a younger man, and this is when we were kind of learning the process. And there were groups of us, and we, one night, a few of us did an invocation to a spirit who will not be named. And it apparently, the impression that we three got was that the request that we made of it was entirely inappropriate. We were, from my experience, I was forced to my knees as if being pushed from my shoulders down. And I looked over, and my brother, who was with me doing the ritual, he was on his knees as well. And then the third person who was doing the ritual fell from a height of about 2 feet in the air to the ground as soon as I looked back at him, right? Now, either he jumped or he just collapsed, and it appeared from my perspective that he was floating in the air prior to that. But from my experiences, that's the event where I've had the most, what I would call, physical compulsions that I've ever experienced, you know? And so physical compulsions are one thing that people really are looking for when it comes to demonic experiences. Most demonic experiences don't involve that at all, right? Most demonic experiences are something that you could totally overlook, right? So if a demon wants to inhabit a human body and it wants to enjoy human things, if you're the type of person who is already in line with enjoying human things, then you may not even notice the involvement of a demonic entity, right? If what you want to do is party and have a good time and eat delicious food and entertain yourself, then that's exactly what the fuck a demon wants too, right? If you look at instances of possession, most of them have been recorded in nuns, right? Or people who are in real strict environments where they're not allowed to enjoy themselves, experience carnality, right? So either this could be the result of them being repressive with their lifestyles and having some kind of a psychological break, or it could be a sign that if they are indeed possessed by a demon, it's pissed off because it's stuck in the fucking nun's body in the middle of rural France somewhere, you know? Where, you know, when it could be drinking absinthe and banging hookers on the docks in Paris.
That sounds great. That sounds like the life I'd like to live.
Right? If you were a demon and you were in a body banging hookers on the docks in Paris and drinking absinthe, you would not be freaking out, spinning your head around and puking pea soup, right? Because you'd be too busy drinking absinthe and banging hookers. If you were bored, trapped in a nunnery somewhere, then yeah, you might be mad, and then we might end up seeing these kinds of violent outbursts that demonic possessions are famous for, right? And again, might, because it could very well be a problem.
Hello?
Did we lose him?
Did we lose him?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, we got you now.
Okay, I'm still here.
Thought maybe you got possessed by a demon or something.
Right in the middle of that.
I'm already there, man. I'm already there.
In the middle of the podcast.
There's a whole party in here, man. There's a whole party in here.
We are legion, for we are many. We are Dave Outlandish.
So is there a rank, like a rank and file for demons, as far as, you know, a hierarchy, and you have little foot soldier demons and then you have the devil, I guess?
Well, so a lot of people like to think so, and especially if you look at the older grimoires and the older, like the Legemeton, for instance, is real particular about the ranks of some of these demons and how many legions of soldiers each of them control, et cetera, et cetera. But then again, not all of them have those kind of entries. So what this makes me kind of believe is that a lot of those, when we talk about hierarchies amongst the demons, these are kind of things that humans have assigned to them, right? I'm not sure that they would give much of a fuck about hierarchies, right? On the other hand, traditionally, when we do invocations and we do rituals, we invoke Satan first, right? And then we invoke demons after Satan. And it's not to say that we necessarily even believe that Satan's a real guy out there, right? It's just that traditionally, Satan, from a Satanist's perspective, kind of represents ourselves, right? So if you're like from the Church of Satan, for instance, they're atheists. They don't believe in mind bullets or invisible monsters or sky daddies or any of that shit. They don't believe in any of it. But they worship themselves, right? It's a self-deification. So in a ritual where we're invoking these demons, we invoke Satan first, kind of invoking ourselves as Satan, right? Now, if these demons are manifestations of our subconsciousness, then we would first want to establish the fact that we are indeed in charge of our consciousness, and that if these entities are functions of our subconscious, then they are subservient to, you know, they're going to come when we ask them to come. They're going to behave appropriately. They're going to be polite to us, right? So we wouldn't use the name of Satan to command or compel them. More or less, we would simply sort of invoke the authority of Satan in ourselves, so we're kind of standing on equal terms with these demons. It's like, I am Satan. The demon's like, I'm Satan too. We're all Satan, right? We're all Satan today. We could stand as equals, you know?
Like on The Walking Dead. What's your name? I'm Negan. As far as I've got a million questions. I'm trying to like prioritize them.
I got like notes all over the place being written
So, as far as, I'll start with an easy one. As far as like, you know, if I were to look up Google, if I were to hop on Google or Bing or whatever, and I typed in list of demons, names of demons, whatever, and it gives me, it's going to give me Christian demons, it's going to give me, you know, Arab, Muslim demons, it's going to give me Jewish demons, it's going to give me Shinto equivalent of demons.
So,
you know what I'm
if
saying?
you go into Google right now and you type in list of names of demons, the first thing it's going to give you is the Lesser Key of Solomon, the Ars Goetia. So that would technically be Jewish demons, right? Now, like you said, there are demons that come from all cultures. They span the entirety of human experience. Because humans have been having, so either these are entities which have pre-existed humans, and so every human culture will obviously encounter them, or they are the subconscious manifestations of humankind's behavior, in which case every culture has behavior, and every culture will have bad behavior or behavior that they deem sort of socially deviant, ergo every culture will have demons, right? So if we're looking at demons as subconscious manifestations, then we can look at the cultures where the demons come from, and we see that there are characteristics that these demons have which are representative of things in their culture, you know, like kappas, Japanese demons, right? The little guys with the hollow heads where they have their water in, right?
The turtle looking thing. Yeah, the turtles. That's what King Hope is based off of.
Yeah, and they have sort of like a moral built into it's built into their existence, right? They're kind of about balance, right? They can't go too far from the water. They can't, right? They have like their own weakness is built into their design because they're a legend and a story that has been distilled through symbolic language from the earliest men up until the present, right? And so what these entities are symbols stacked on top of one another, right? So densely that instead of just appearing to be symbols to us, they now appear to be creatures with lives and in consciousnesses, sentience of their own, even if they're not, but they may be. And even if they weren't, they may be now, thanks to the amount of attention that we've given them.
And it makes sense that it makes sense that, like, you know, cultures, we have all these associations with demons and whatnot, and you go to different cultures, like Tom was saying, there's all these different ones, and there's Jewish and Shinto and whatever, but it's us that makes that association, not them. So you can't really say that, oh yeah, there's Jewish demons and there's Shinto demons, when you could just easily say it's like saying there's Mexicans and then there's Mexican Americans. Well, that's us that makes that distinction. So, you know, to them, they're just demons.
I mean, if you look at some of the early, so looking at the demons that are most popular, the Goetia, right? King Solomon, he summons these 42 spirits. But we also look at the history of Mesopotamia and Samaria. Now, these are the cultures where a lot of those demons come from, because a lot of early Hebrew history takes place in slavery, enslaved in Babylon, etc., right? Or in Egypt, depending on who you ask, right? And so they took the demons from these places, and the demons in Babylon and Mesopotamia served an entirely different purpose. They were prayed to, right? Charms were made of them. I've been to the Louvre, and there's a whole case full of charms and statuaries of demons, right? Because they prayed to the things that threatened them. They prayed to the things.
So, and I understand your frustration here.
I think we lost him.
Are you still there?
No,
Okay.
I'm still here.
I just wanted to make sure before, Dustin, you led me astray. No, you guys all got quiet all at the same time. So I understand your frustration. You got to bear with me. I understand your frustration. I think we all do understand that there's the difference between whether they do or do not exist and how you wrap your head around it. Like, are they physical or spiritual beings or whatever, or are they just your brain being funny or whatever? Which the brain is a very complex organ, so I mean it's very possible, you know. So I think we're all there, but what I think kind of where I was going with that question about what demons are what. You, as a subject matter expert on this, I mean, I think I don't think anyone will disagree with me on this. None of us are anywhere near you, where you are as far as knowledge on this topic. What would you say is the most definitive, like, there's a demon of, you know what I'm saying? Like a Native American culture would say, you know, there's the spirit of the wind and the spirit of the trees and the spirit of the water or whatever. Is there like a definitive
The
list?
spirit of St. Louis.
Yeah.
The spirit of St. Louis.
Is there like a definitive list that you guys, and I don't mean like you people, you know, like that you guys typically use as far as like these are the guys we can call upon, these are the guys that we know exist, that through tried and true methodology we've determined that these particular demons are the ones that we can call on and who will answer the phone.
They're amenable. They're more amenable to the thing.
Yeah. So that's a good point, and I think it's relevant regardless of what you believe about demons, right? Like, so if demons were real entities, then some of them might be culturally biased, right? Like, for instance, the Loa. The Loa are the spirits of voodoo, right? And then I, as a white dude, if I'm conjuring the Loa, I may not expect them to be super friendly to me, considering that most of what they've been doing historically has been cursing white dudes, right? So you would expect if they were real spirits, then they may have a type of cultural bias present, right? Now, even if they're not real spirits, what they're doing, what we're noticing with demon interaction are placebo and nocebo effects that are very strong. And these are triggered by appropriate cultural messages. So I would say that if you're going to use demons, use the ones that are culturally appropriate for your upbringing, right? Because those are the ones that are going to hold the most authority subconsciously in your mind, and those are the ones that are going to have the greatest chance of triggering psychosomatic experiences, nocebo and placebo effects. Or they're going to be, and if they are spirits, then they're the ones that are going to be most friendly to you because they're native to your cultural upbringing.
So I can't call upon Papa Legba, is what you're saying.
I mean, certainly. Well, also, Papa Legba is a unique, he's a unique sort of example of the Loa, and then he's sort of more amicable to people in general. You have to Legba's like the link between the spirit world and the physical world in general, you know?
Okay.
He has a lot of sympathy towards people. But there are other Loa that I really would, I personally wouldn't, just because I understand the importance of the cultural triggers as far as what effects go. But I would suggest them to other people who they may be more culturally appropriate for, you know?
No, that makes sense. So do you have this is going to sound dumb, and I'm going to word it kind of dumb because I'm a dumb guy. What do you have a Rolodex of preferred demons that you might interact with? You know what I'm saying? Do you have your go-to guys?
Yeah. I do have some demons that I definitely talk to more than others. Specifically for my own personal stuff, I talk to Belial and Asmodeus a lot. I do a lot of work for the work that I do. I get a lot of business from women, and then they want to be reconciled with their lost lovers. And Zepar, he does a lot of good work in that arena. So, this is just an example.
Give us another example. Yeah, I want to know. You said you help women with their lost lovers. I'm interested in that. Give us an example. You don't have to name names or anything. But.
So they'll call me and they'll be like, hey. Or they'll get in touch with me on Instagram. On Dave Outlandish on Instagram is where I get a lot of my business. I don't know how they find me or look me up, but they usually get in touch with me and they're like, hey, this is my problem. And with the women who don't have a lot of magical experience, for some reason, they are almost universally trying to get their exes back, right? And they want card readings associated with what their exes are doing. They want card readings associated with what the women around their exes are doing. And I don't have the time in the day, even though I charge for these card readings, not because I want to make money off of it, but because I don't want to do 1 million of them a day for people, you know? And so if they want me to do them, they pay me beer money. It's just $6.66. It's a six-pack, right? It's just to discourage them. It's just to discourage them from making me sit here and do divination for them all day long. But so what I will do then is be like, get a Ouija board, talk to Zepar. So Zepar, he is all about reuniting wayward lovers. That's in the Goetia, that's his thing. From my experience, that's what he's good at, and that's what he likes doing. So I'll get him to get a Ouija board, and I'll get him to contact Zepar, and then he can do, and it satisfies their need to know what's going on, because apparently their interactions on the Ouija board with this demon are satisfying to them.
So what does this demon just more or less lets them know what their ex is up to?
I guess, man. I see, like I said, I'm not the one doing it. I don't have time to mess with that crap all the time, so I just tell them to do it. And apparently they're satisfied. I don't get the details from them because, frankly, I don't want the details from them.
Sure.
And, like, if I'm doing divination on them, I'd rather have less information about them than more, you know?
Let's stick with this real quick while we're on the topic of Ouija board. We did an episode on the Ouija board, and it was, how to use a Ouija board safely, quote unquote. And it was obviously for people who are, just looking to go to Toys R Us and get a Ouija board and mess with it. But so you're talking about you legitimately use a Ouija board or a spirit board or a talking board or whatever to actually talk to these demons. So that would imply you say they work.
Well, if these are spirits, then they should be able to move your hands around on a board, right? Now, if they're not spirits, and if what they really are manifestations, complex, interactive manifestations of your subconsciousness, then the only way to talk to them would be to use something that allows you to talk to yourself, So
it's just your innermost desires, really, or what you honestly, subconsciously believe to be true.
Now, one of those two things is true, right? And a Ouija board is located uniquely in that it's able to get information regardless of which one of those is true. Like a spirit box. A spirit box that functions by jumping around frequencies on the radio, right? That could only give you useful information if there are real spirits, right? Otherwise, it's just white noise. However, with a Ouija board, even if they're real spirits, you can get information, or if it's just your subconscious thoughts, you can still get information. So that's why we use Ouija boards, because regardless of the reality of the situation, they're able to provide us with the similar types of useful information.
So, okay, for the sake of just... I know you're like kind of creating like a disclaimer for yourself throughout this whole thing, and I appreciate that. No, I'm just teasing. So I'm teasing. Yeah. You're giving both options, and that's cool. Yeah. So, but for you, which one do you honestly believe it is? Do you think it's both? At time, or do you think that there are legitimately spirits who are going to move my hands if Dustin and I hopped on a Ouija board? Say there was a spirit in the room, or there was one, I was successfully able to talk to one. You would say that there is legitimately a demon or a spirit or whatever who is going to interact with our hands to move that piece. Would you say that that's a thing that happens?
My personal belief about what's going on is that there's probably a mixture between the two, right?
Okay.
It's probably a mixture between there are extra physical entities, right? Collaborative intelligences that exist in a way that we don't, and that we're able to interact with them somehow, right? But I also think that part of all of that is that it is a part of ourselves, right? That these collaborative intelligences are kind of located in a conflux where all human consciousness is able to be located, Like, if there is a spirit world, then that's where all your thoughts are too,
See, that makes sense to me. All that makes sense to me, because we have this predisposition of all that where we just assume that there's like two separate worlds. There's our world and then there's the spirit world. And then you go, well, how can there be? Because I've never seen. And then, you have all this stigma about it too. So then you go, well, I just don't believe, or I totally believe, or whatever. But then there's always that gray area too, where the things that we don't address are the things that we don't think of, and we go, well, it could be this too, because nobody's thought of that, or nobody says, hey, what about, the fact that it could all exist in the same plane? We just don't see it, So I think I think it's logic. It seems more logical to talk about it that way.
Yeah, and another thing, I'm not a scientist. I'm not a physicist, right? So like I study symbols and I study the way that symbols interact with people culturally. And I study the way that people interact with themselves using those symbols and how they interact with other people. And sometimes these things produce placebo and nocebo. And sometimes they produce things that are totally inexplicable, you know? And but again, I'm not a physicist. I'm not trying. My goal is not to find a theorem that unifies all of the information about the spirit world with modern science. You know,
You're not trying to come up with the paranormal string theory.
Yeah, I would more consider myself an artist. You know, I just want to kind of use these symbols to evoke whatever kind of reactions I can from people and make art with that. And if that art changes people's lives for the better or the worse, then, you know, maybe it is magic.
As far as the Ouija, I'm coming back. I'm coming back to this Ouija board over and over again. So, what's your opinion on Zozo, the Ouija board demon?
Zozo, that's my guy, Zozo.
Personally, okay, here's an anecdote, right? Here's an anecdote about Zozo. It's a recent one. I get up with this lady and she's asking me questions and I don't want to give her a million card readings, so I give her the name of the demon and I give her a Ouija and I tell her to go get a Ouija board, and she does this, right? And she does this for about a week with no problems at all. And then she starts looking into other demons that she can probably use to get what she wants. And in her research, she comes across the idea of Zozo, right? And then nearly immediately after she comes across the idea of Zozo, now she can't even use her board because Zozo is blocking all of her communications, and she can't get him on, and she can't get him off the board. And now she wants me to do the research.
She didn't close that thing out.
And so the question is Zozo a real thing that actually came and aggravated her, or did she read about it and is she super impressionable because she is paying me for magic in the first place, right? And her being super impressionable led to this event, right? Now, what I told her is that she's already dealing with demons. Just tell those demons to tell Zozo to leave her the fuck alone. And she did, and it worked. So that's my Zozo anecdote.
So what do you think it is, though?
I personally haven't had any dealings with it.
Okay. So it's probably just, I wonder what the origin of Zozo is. And that's the thing. And we've said his name 3 times now, so he's going to manifest. But it's like
there's an interesting thing. There's an interesting type of entity known as an egregore, right? An egregore is a thought form generated by multiple people. And so if you're thinking about an egregore, think about a demigod, kind of, right? Or a demon, right? But they're purely made from the minds of a group of intentioned people. So Zozo is sort of an example of an egregore, right? You get a story. If you go to the Ouija board and it says Z-O-Z-O, or you say his name 3 times, then the demon Zozo will come, right? And then it starts happening to people. And then people spread the story, and then it starts happening to more and more and more people, right? So even if Zozo was not an existent entity prior to this, the collective attention and the collective detail, right? Everybody is sharing these details about him, and they're all able to summon up basically the same type of entity in their minds when they think about him. Right? This creates what is known as an egregore, a collaborative thought form. And so do these egregores exist like spirits, right? If you believe in spirits, then egregores do exist and interact like spirits, right? If not, if you believe that they're just, again, subconscious manifestations, then an egregore does the exact same thing as these other subconscious manifestations. So what we're getting at here is that the origin of these entities is unimportant. It doesn't matter if they are 5,000-year-old Babylonian demons whose statues have been being dug up from the catacombs since, fucking ever, or if they were invented like Slender Man right?
Look, I'm sitting there. What's
Speaking of
funny?
the Slender Man.
Hold on. What you?
It doesn't. The origin doesn't matter.
Well, listen. You talk about you just said Slender Man, and I'm sitting here whispering to Tom because we just did a show on the Slender Man last episode.
And he's trying to get my attention, like, hey,
yeah. And I'm
should we ask
whispering
him about it?
Yeah, I'm whispering to him like this is kind of like the Slender Man because we all know it's BS made up, but these girls think it's real, and so that's what you're saying more or less. Is
an entity that was made up by people that impacted the behavior of human beings so profoundly that they murdered another person.
Yeah,
that sounds like a real thing, even if it was made up.
That was the conclusion we came to at the end of the show, too, was that, well, the conclusion that Jameis came to.
No, that Dustin came to.
Yeah, that was my,
Dustin.
Hey, that was my stolen idea. So, to me, what I'm hearing is that maybe a lot of these demons aren't actually real, and they're more of a made-up thing where people have believed it so much that now if you get explosive diarrhea, it's the diarrhea demon, and it is what it is.
Right.
Well, it would be almost like, okay, if I were to sit here and I were to read up on WikiHow how to summon a demon, and it would show me all these symbols that I need to draw on the floor, and that I need to use goat's blood, and that I need to do this, and I need to chant this, and I do it, and my request to this demon, whatever it says on WikiHow, whatever it could be John Smith for all it matters, and I sit there and I pray to John Smith, hey, grant me this particular ability, I want to be successful, and then the next thing you know, I wake up the next morning because subconsciously I'm like, I'm going to be successful, John Smith's going to make it happen, I'm going to wake up and I'm going to bust my butt all day, and lo and behold, after 6 months I'm a millionaire, because I sat there and I really focused on doing what I should have been doing all along. So psychosomatically, I've been able to harness this ability of John Smith.
Yeah, that's so interesting. That's such a good point. That is a really good point.
So that point is kind of the salient point of what I'm getting at as far as modern demonology goes, right? What is a practical, what's the practical application behind modern demonology? And that would be, let's take the negative aspects of you. Let's take the monsters that you have inside of you, and let's make them work for you instead of fight you. That's the idea.
Yeah, see, all that makes sense to me because I'm the kind of guy where I don't really believe in anything, but I won't rule anything out. You know what I mean? Like, you can't say there is and you can't say there isn't, so it's always possible. You know what I mean?
So what I want to know, let's say just from your personal experience, your belief, you don't have to, obviously I'm not going to sit here and poke and prod you to try to give up any kind of like true experiences that have happened or whatever, unless you want to, in which case, you're encouraged to. That's what we have you here for. If I were to say, I want to become a millionaire, okay? I want to make $1 million, and I want to reach out to a demon, and I think this is what V was talking about earlier, but he was being very like smart about it because he doesn't doesn't say stupid things like I do. That's my job. If I say, I'm Tom Miller, I want to summon a demon and I want to make $1 million, and I will sell my soul to make it happen, or I will whatever I got to do, and I do all this stuff. Is there a way to make that happen using not psychosomatic, not using the mental idea of demons? Like if I were to want to talk to a actual spiritual demon on another plane or on our plane, you know what I'm saying? Like if I want to talk to an actual factual demon and I want him to get me $1 million, can I make that happen?
Okay. So the first thing you have to ask yourself is this. Why do you think your soul is worth $1 million?
Okay, $20. I want to make $20.
Right? No, the question is that, really, though.
Back Fritos.
So people are like, I want $1 million. I want to be famous. Why do you assume that your soul is worth any of that? Right? It's not. Now, if you want to accomplish that, what you're doing when you're selling your soul is you are agreeing to a set of behavioral modifications, right, that if you're actually dealing with demons, will be imposed upon you, right? Your behavior will change. Your personality will change, because it's not just going to be you going through your life. It's going to be you going through your life with the aid of a demonic entity who will be with you forever, right? And this isn't necessarily 100% good, in the sense that demons are compulsive beings, right? You may not know what you want and make a pact and find yourself totally overwhelmed with the new compulsory behavior that you have, right? But that's on you, because you're the one that made the pact, right? People ask for things that they want without understanding how to use them or what to do after them, right? Or they ask for things that there's no way, right? Like, so if you sell your soul to a demon for $1 million, what that really means is that you're now going to collaborate with that demon to get as much money as you possibly can for the rest of your life. And if you don't succeed, then it's not just, oh, the demon didn't give me $1 million. That demon is incorporated now within your person, right? So if you give up on the pact, you're breaking the contract, right? So it's not just a matter of you give your soul and you get whatever you want. Giving your soul means doing that thing as intensely or more intensely than humanly possible for the duration of your life.
So,
right?
Riddle me this. If I were to say, hey, I want $1 million, let's make that happen, summon this demon, and it works, okay? My first order of business is I'm going to go rob a bank, right? So that might be the thing that I do. I might wake up in the morning, be presented with an opportunity to rob a bank, right? So that might be the answer, and it might not be something I would have normally done. Like, I would have never in a million years thought, hey, I'm going to go rob a bank. But tomorrow it might seem super appealing, right? So, and what you're also saying is, if I want to be famous, okay, if that were my thing, if I said, hey, I want to be famous, summon a demon, it works. As far as I know, it didn't work. Maybe it didn't. Maybe I'm like, oh, I have like psychological trip or whatever. But tomorrow I wake up and I bump into a Hollywood executive who says, if you suck my dick right now, I will make you a star. And I do it. and I mean, that might pop up, right? That might be how it goes down. So like when you say situations like these are things that you wouldn't normally do, but this demon is taken over, very compulsive. I want to be, he just does what he wants. Now that's a part of my personality, part of my whatever. I go around blowing dudes to get my way to the top. I have to blow Harvey Weinstein eventually and jerk off in a potted plant. And that's how it plays out, right? I mean, that's how it seems to me. Maybe I'm wrong. But then you got things like River Phoenix. Like when River Phoenix turned into this, drug addict and ends up overdosing at that club, whatever. That very well possibly could have been, for all we know, he could have sold his whatever or he could have made a Faustian deal or a bargain, right? And, he becomes a drug addict, ends up overdosing because the demon is, whatever, compulsive, like you said. Am I on something of a right track?
In a way. I think the only thing here is that if you're the kind of person who is going to genuinely sell your soul, really honestly believing that what you have done is sell your soul to the devil for $1 million, and then wake up the next morning and start robbing banks and blowing, right? I feel like what we have here
is a guy who would have normally robbed a bank and blown a bunch of guys.
Where your impulse control was never very good to begin with, right? And then listen, if I really genuinely believed that there were invisible monsters flying around that could take over people's body, I would not believe that they would give a fuck about you, right? I would not believe that they wouldn't take over your body and make you go suck a bunch of dudes' dicks. Because I don't think they would. You know what I'm saying? I don't think it would matter to them, especially if they exist eternally, right? If they're like immortal creatures, what does the 37 seconds that your life is to them, right? The 18 dicks he made you suck in the alley was like a blip, right? He didn't give a fuck about that. So... and then that's why we call them Faustian deals. Demons aren't people. They don't have, if we're talking about them as actual spirits, they're not people, and they don't have the same kind of morals and empathy that people do all the time,
So here's the thing. We're talking about sucking dicks and we're making it sound like it's a bad thing or an inappropriate thing. Let's just say here on
Hey
You Had
man,
Me at
maybe that's your
Bigfoot.
thing though. Like maybe you always wanted to suck 18 dicks that day, and the demon liberated you, and now your dick sucking is just free, right? Because that'd be a beautiful thing. Sucking dicks is not always bad.
See, now you're making me wonder if I actually want to suck a dick or not.
Dustin's over here trying to
Yours
unbuckle
sounds
my
like
pants. I'm
you're
wearing
helping,
pants, Dustin. Come on.
I'm just saying, man. Like, you got my number.
Where's James? Where's he at?
I know, right? Where's James?
No, I get it. And what I was trying to say was here on You Had Me at Bigfoot, we are we're a friendly show to the gay community. Like, we're here for you guys. You know, this is whatever, something,
Especially-
LGBT dash something. So,
Especially if they want to give us a deal to take this show to the mainstream.
yeah, if I
Suck
gotta,
a dick away.
hey, I'm about ready to sell my soul to a demon to suck Harvey Weinstein's dick, so that we can get this show on actual like mainstream production. But no, I like it, and that makes you make a huge or a great point about, you know, if I were the guy who was gonna, you know, looking to get up a bunch of virgin blood and draw a pentagram and stuff based off of a Wikipedia article or a WikiHow article or whatever. Yeah, I'm probably the kind of guy who's gonna make bad decisions, like if it presents itself. Oh, this racetrack is having its biggest day ever. There's probably there's going to be a whole bunch of money there. I'll go rob that place and I'll have $1 million. So yeah, it makes sense. So what you're saying is making it makes a lot of sense. So to try to kind of like bridge those two gaps of extreme of like where I am and where you are, like what. And I'm still, I don't know, I might be the only one here who's still having a hard time wrapping his head around it. What, if I were to say, what is something that I could reasonably ask a demon? Say I were on your level to where I had that ability and I've had that correspondence or that kind of interaction, what sort of thing could I legitimately ask of a demon and they would deliver, and for what of me? Like, you know what I'm saying? Like if I were just a regular guy.
So, if I were gonna say, what's the thing that you will probably notice the most, right? Because the easiest ones would be like, I want to be more confident, or I want to have more willpower, or I want to, you know what I'm saying? So these things wouldn't be really easy to notice because they happen gradually, right? But some of the things, for instance, would be I would like more women to be attracted to me, right? And that is one that's really popular. I mean, especially if you consider the people who've been writing these, the virgin monks who've been writing these grimoires for, centuries. Like, picking up babes is something that has. That's the one thing that I would say, if you really want to try it and you really want to do it, and you want something that's not too extreme, but will still get you, but not too boring, but will still get you some results that you could see, I would try to do that. Right now, the caveat to that is that the type of chick that a demon is going to bring you is going to be, she's going to be good for, some things, but she might also be super fucking crazy. So careful. But
Yeah,
that's the one that, like, that's the one that I've seen the most sort of with people of kind of a normal amount of experience in the subject. Those are the ones that I've seen succeed the most profoundly, right? Is like, oh, now there's a chick, it's way out of his league, right? That kind of stuff is kind of uncanny. And that's so if I was going to say anything, like if you want to kind of impress yourself by doing it, that would be the one I would suggest. And again, it's a double-edged sword because not everybody is in the situation where they can just like conjure up a babe. You know what I'm saying? And it's not like she just appears. You have to go find a chick. She's not just going to walk up on your doorstep, right? Again, you have to put yourself out there, and you have to obviously have yourself out there. You have to like signal to them that you're the one they're looking for. But from what I have seen, as long as you do that,
you're going to get it anyways.
I mean, and like I said, we have, so with demons, it's about behavior. So what they're going to do is shape your behavior and your thoughts. in a way that's going to give you what you want. They're not going to go out into the world, grab a thing, and walk it back to you, right? They're going to walk you to the thing and compel you to pick it up, you know?
So more or less, whatever they compel us to do, we already have it inside of ourselves to do it. We just choose. We had just to that point have chosen not to do this, and they
either you didn't think of it, or you were too scared to do it, or you had all these anxieties or hang-ups, or you know, maybe it's part of trauma that you've experienced in your past and you want to get over it. You know, like the compulsion that demons are notorious for bringing, can get over things like that. You know, they can give you the push you need to, instead of being scared or socially anxious, or, you know, it could give you that push.
So you kind of got to let Barbados take the wheel. You know what I mean? Like, right?
Exactly. Exactly. And that's kind of universally true for all sorts of spiritual entities. Like, even when we're talking about the traditionally good ones, right? Even when we're talking about the Spirit of God or the Holy Spirit, it moves you. You know what I'm saying? Like, the way that spirits interact with humans is pretty much universally understood to be as a behavior influencer. You know, the Holy Spirit, it moves people, it influences their behavior. Or demons, they compel people, they influence their behavior, right? Ghosts compel people, influence their behavior. Not so much like, and we do have instances where maybe they are picking things up, or maybe they are moving things, right? But more often than not, what we get are, we get talks about feelings and compulsions and things like that.
So would it be, so when you're saying picking things up and moving things, obviously not like, you know, well, I'm not even going to touch that because that's silly, but like compelling like some guy who's working on a freight ship and he happens to be transporting a bunch of iPods, and then he takes one of the boxes and moves it and steals it, gives it to another guy, and then this guy gets hit by a car, and then you happen to stumble upon it. You know what I'm saying? Like, it just sort of happens in a way that it wouldn't have it might have normally happened, but like
maybe. But the interesting thing about that is that by the very nature of those events, there'd be no way for us to be like, yeah, that's what happened. Right? So like, from my perspective, I just walked down the street and I found an iPod, right? I don't the convoluted journey that it may or may not have taken to get there. So we really can't, even if we think that might be the case, or we can rationalize that that's how they would behave, there's still no way to ever get evidence of it. So it's like... Right.
Well, that's like, what do they say at the end of Usual Suspects? V, you know the answer. What does he say about the devil not ever existing? The best trick the devil ever played was convincing the world he doesn't exist.
Yeah.
Something like along those lines. So that's interesting stuff. I've been asking a lot of questions, and I'm sorry, I'm hogging the microphone really, but
I'm kind of just shocked. I'm like blown away this guy's knowledge. Like, I'm not gonna lie, I was kind of just expecting like some lunatic. I thought we were gonna get some guy that was like, "Yeah, man, I do this,and."
Well, let's not be too
you're just extremely knowledgeable and articulate too. I respect that. You know, and you're not. You don't. I kind of think I have everything. He gave us plenty of information. I don't think I have any more questions. Maybe Dustin's got something.
You had asked something about the spells and incantations, like it's Morrowind or Skyrim. I sell spells and incantations.
Yeah, so let me go back to that question. So, am I clear for takeoff?
Yeah, go ahead. Question? You have my permission.
Okay.
Let me ask the demon.
Thank you, boss.
Zozo.
So back to what the question I asked, and they shut me down. What are some of the spells and stuff that you can sell?
Okay. So, I guess the discipline of magic that I would most largely subscribe to is known as chaos magic. Chaos magic is all about the deconstruction of traditional magical ritual and praxis into these kind of iconic aspects of it that work, right? So what I will do is read all these old grimoires, and I'll go through them and I'll find, say someone says, hey, I want a spell that will force all the bad people out of my life, right? And make it so they don't notice me. So then I'm going to look through all these old grimoires, and I'm going to find all the spells for repelling enemies. I'm going to find all the spells for making you unnoticeable and invisible. I'm going to look at all the similarities they have, and I'm going to take it and distill it down into one spell that I feel contains all the necessary symbolism, imagery, and cultural triggers that will work for the person that asked me for it. And so then I'll go and I'll usually, depending on the kind of magic they're more comfortable with, I'll either make a sigil or a charm or a veve, or I'll make incantations or rituals for them. It really depends on their comfort level as far as what kind of magic they want to do. Because like I said, I design it for them and then give it to them for them to use more often than not.
So is this what you were talking about when you said commissions?
I do that, and art also commissions. I'll just do drawings and stuff for people too, but I do charms as commissions. So like if you go to my Instagram page and you look down, you'll see a bunch of witch charms and wizard charms, and they're all charms that are done for friends, for commissions.
Why don't you give us the Instagram page so that we can plug it?
Dave Outlandish on Instagram. The Afterlife's premier bioexorcist. I got demon running through me. Come on down, I'll chew on a dog. That's in the movie.
Dave Outlandish, Dave Outlandish, Dave Outlandish.
Say my name 3 times, or go find me on Instagram. All lowercase Dave Outlandish.
Nice.
So about the spells and incantations. So like, what does your library look like? As far as, do you have like a physical like library of books that you use to look for these spells?
I had a physical library of books, but I moved around a lot. Now I started a Discord community probably about a year and a half, maybe closer to 2 years ago. And there's a virtual library that I have about 1,800 or more, close to 2,000 books on.
Oh, virtual?
Yeah, like, so do you like go into, you can open up your PDF folder and basically like search for whatever, you can find all your hotkeys or your keywords or whatever that you're looking for, and that's got to speed up production on spells and incantations. Not to like, I mean, that sounds funny, but...
Oh, it does. But no, you got to move into the modern world, man. You can't stay in the past forever. Just because we're dealing with magic, just because we're wizards, doesn't mean that we can't cloud compute.
Is that what you actually consider yourself to? Like, is that your professional title, wizard?
My professional, I would call myself a sorcerer if I was going to be traditional, because what I do is very akin to traditionally what a sorcerer does: deal with otherworldly spirits. Help people in a sort of a therapeutic way, also provide spells and things like that. Wizard is more of like a colloquial term that we kind of, like, I would definitely call myself a wizard, but it doesn't really describe anything real.
And no one else better call you a wizard too, right? Unless they're a wizard. Like, is that the rule?
I like it. I like wizard, man. It's not a slur. We taking it back.
That's pretty funny.
No, you know what I like about this though is, and we talk about stuff every once in a while that people like to like move away from. Like a lot of like conservative Christian. I consider myself a conservative Christian, and a lot of fellow conservative Christians move away from these topics because they're like, whoa. That's not, that's the work of the
taboo.
devil, and
it's so taboo.
And plus, they're like, it's fake, it's not real, And then a lot of them will say that, and I'm like, well, no, you're wrong. I'll tell you right now, because right in the Bible, I can tell you there's at least, I mean, just like off the top of my head, I could probably name like 3 or 4 like solid stories of times where people were committing or were doing acts of magic, such as what you're talking about.
And I mean, specifically, why I would call myself a sorcerer is because the Bible refers to people who do magic as sorcerers.
Exactly, and that's what a lot of people when they say there's no such thing as
soothsayer too. Soothsayer, right? That's a term.
Soothsayer also. That's more like for divination and shit. But yeah, it's the same kind of basic principles.
Yeah, so I mean that's what a lot of people. I mean, if anyone's turned off by this sort of topic and they consider themselves a Christian, I'm like, hey, this is something that you should know, and that's a big part of why I kind of got into demonology and studying just like the basics of what we're talking about here, like the very like.
Yeah, you have to look at it instead of as just a taboo, but as like something that's scholarly too. Like if you approach it as like, oh, it's so bad, it's so wrong, and then I think you're just being closed-minded. If you approach it scholarly.
Exactly. And to use myself as an example, right? I was a conservative Christian teenager who approached the subject and was totally shut down. And now I'm a devil worshipping sorcerer for a living. So like, if you don't engage the topics, then people are gonna go engage them some other way, and the way that they engage them might not be within your control. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
So.
Does anybody else have any questions? I mean, obviously I could sit here and I could talk to you all night about all this stuff, and I'm sure all of us could. Does anybody else have any questions that we want to hit him up about?
How active is your house at night?
Like, as far as, like, spiritual activity?
Yeah, spiritually, how active is your house at night?
Dude, I am not, I am like -5% psychic, okay? So assuming if there were spirits in my house, they could be trying to scratch me on the face and scream in my ear, and I would be, looking at Reddit on my phone, and like I would have no idea. I don't have any psychic abilities. I don't, you know what I'm saying? Unless I specifically am trying to do it, specifically engaged in a ritual, you know what I'm saying? Then I really try to have a very sort of narrow awareness, because assuming my room is extremely active, I'm sure that would get annoying if I were the type of person who was always open to it, So more often than not, I'm totally shut off to it, unless I'm explicitly doing it.
As far as like stuff happening, like would you say that there are times where you're like, well, I didn't, why is my couch tipped over? Not something that extreme, but like, why is something knocked off the shelf? Why is something misplaced? Why is my TV on? I didn't leave it on. Why did my TV turn on? Has that sort of stuff ever happened?
So a lot of the time with these kind of poltergeisty activities, most of the times with those activities, it's when either there's someone in the house, right, who has some kind of the atheist term is overactive imagination, right? Otherwise, you would say they were a fucking psychic medium, right, with powers that were innate that they had no idea of, right? So no, a lot of the time when you get things moved around, we see those in houses where we have other people. And those people tend to have either really overactive imaginations or they tend to exhibit signs of maybe that they might be psychic or something, right? So, like, you a lot of the times don't get poltergeist stuff unless you have young people or people who are going through emotional events or going through some real, you know what I'm saying? There's usually another reason besides just a spirit why you will get things supposedly moved around, you know what I'm saying? And so I don't have any of that going on in my life right now, so my place is pretty chill.
Well, yeah, like so poltergeist, yeah, that's typically, I mean, people will argue the topic or what causes it, but poltergeist is really like kids who are going through puberty and have all that pent up kinetic or telekinetic energy or whatever that's exploding in like in a way that makes it look like a ghost or whatever, is knocking shit off the wall.
Hormones.
Yeah, but it's for crazy psychic or kids with psychic ability that don't know, and they don't know how to get rid of that pent up telekinetic energy. It's like a kid who doesn't know how to masturbate, and then the first time he does, it's like all over the wall. So, do you believe that that's a thing? Like, I know you kind of like distance yourself, but then kind of come back to it. And you give real politician answers, which is okay, because I know you're not trying to pigeonhole yourself into a certain theory.
Well, and also 100% I don't know. I am undecided 100%, right? Like, I really look at every instance as if it could be the work of mind bullets or invisible monsters. And then I treat it like it is. But at the same time, I also look at it as if it is psychosomatic. and if it is purely psychological. And in the way that I interact with these things, I try to find the method that will work for both of those things, right? I try to do the thing that's going to work if it's real or if it's psychosomatic, right? Because I'm 100%, I'm undecided. I haven't, I've seen a lot of things that are weird, but at the same time, I know that the mind is weird, So I can't discount either one, and I like to approach it as if it could be both, as if it is fake, but also as if it's real. And I try to tailor my approaches to fit both of those possible scenarios.
Sure. That's pretty cool. I personally, I'm a ghost guy. I believe, I don't know what ghosts are. I know based off of, biblical teachings, I know that there is such a thing as ghosts because they referred to Jesus as being like a ghost on the water. And why would they call him that if there wasn't such a thing? And I know people can talk to the dead because they've done it multiple times. What Samuel went and talked to, who was it? Anyways, he went and talked to somebody who was dead. He went and talked to a witch. So I know all these things are real, even from like a Christian perspective. As far as like scientific, at that point, like you're still kind of like you said, unsure. Like it's really like it's hard to say. Like for me personally, that's my belief structure.
I know something's happening. I don't know what it is, but I know it's something.
Sure, and that's what a lot of people don't want to talk about. They, like I said, they don't want to talk about it, even though it's right there in black and white and red in some instances in the Bible, and they still don't want to talk about it. But even like from this perspective, like if I'm sitting here and my TV turns on randomly and it's not plugged in, I'm like, okay, there's something going on here, and whatever it is, even if I'm not a religious person, there's something going on. So like you said, it's hard to say definitively from any perspective what it is. And, I know I like to pick on you about giving political answers, but I get it. Like it's very like you have to kind of take an objective approach to some of these things. So that's, are there demons that harass people just for no other reason?
If I take personal experience and firsthand accounts to be evidence, then I would say yeah, because I've had people come to me telling me that they had been harassed by a specific demon for a length of time for no apparent reason whatsoever, right? And I mean, so if I take first-hand account as evidence, I would say yes, there are. Now that makes me wonder, why would they? Well, probably. I don't see a reason why they wouldn't, right? If they were bored and the person was easily fucked with, it seems like something's going to do to pass the time, right? Like I said, they don't really care about people in the same way people care about eternity, people.
Right?
Yeah. But at the same time, a lot of these people who come and talk to me and saying that they're being harassed by demons, at the same time, a lot of them seem to tell a lot of people that they are being harassed by demons. They seem to bring it up in conversation a lot, right? It seems to give them a sense of identity, right? So maybe what they're doing is being harassed by a demon because they want the attention. But what they don't want to do is admit that they want the attention of a demon, right? And so the demon's playing along, like, all right, human, I will harass you because you want attention, but you don't want to admit that you want attention. Right? Because people are weird, and I'm just saying, a lot of the people who've come to me telling me they have been harassed by demons with no provocation could really use a boyfriend or girlfriend.
We got a lot of cats.
I mean, I'm just saying, like, they could use the attention.
So is it possible for me to just unintentionally gain the attention? So what I guess that's what you're saying is, like, I personally could unintentionally gain the attention of a demon and become what many would refer to as demonically possessed or oppressed or whatever. Could that happen accidentally without me saying, hey, I want a demon, come see me, come inhabit me, come
hang out?
I mean, it's, again, if we take first-hand accounts as evidence, I would say that yes, right? But speaking from experience, I would say that it is rarely a case where you didn't actually ask for it in a way, right? And again, if we're interacting with demons and we don't really believe that they're demons, and we don't really understand that they can read our minds, and we don't understand that while we're sitting alone in our room, pissed off in the dark, wishing feverishly, for that one thing that could make things better that you would give anything for, right?
Yeah.
A lot of people don't even realize that what they are doing there or could be doing there is actually making pact, right? And so, especially if demons are real spiritual entities and we've been put in a society where they're not considered real, then I could definitely see people making pacts with demons, using even traditional methods to make pacts with demons, and not knowing that that's what they're doing because they haven't been taught about it, because the idea is totally taboo and culturally, you don't speak of it. So yeah, I'd say it's possible. And I actually read an article just the other day about the Catholic Church seeing an extreme uptick in the amount of exorcism rituals they're being requested.
Yeah, they had to hire on train up a bunch of priests to do it.
And they're giving the opening prayers over the phone and shit. So it's like, on the one hand, you have our increasingly secular society, which is telling us that demons aren't real. On the other hand, you have Catholic priests giving exorcism prayers over the phone, right? So, yeah, I'd say you could get accidentally possessed in the modern world.
So what?
It's interesting.
Why does? Can you exorcise a demon?
I would not personally exorcise a demon.
I mean, can somebody do it? Can a priest actually do it?
I mean, I feel like an exorcism is basically just torturing both people until one of them gives up, and you just hope that the demon gives up first. You know what I'm saying? Like, I feel like if we look at the results of exorcisms, a lot of them result in damage and trauma.
Oh, yeah.
A lot of them result in death. Like, exorcisms historically are unsafe practices, right?
Yeah.
Even amongst practitioners of magic, exorcisms are unsafe practices, right? It requires restraining a person against their will. It requires ignoring their pleas. It requires starvation, usually other kinds of trauma, usually herbal remedies that are not approved by any government agency. So, like, in all cultures, they have exorcism rituals. And in all cultures, these rituals are dangerous if performed correctly and fatal if performed incorrectly. So I would never suggest exorcising a demon. And I would always 100% suggest trying to cooperate and make a pact with the demon whose body you now share, who really isn't anybody's fault. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's just a situation. Shit happens. The demon's in your body now. All it wants to do is help. So why don't we just let it?
So what's the... Man, see, now we're on a whole nother... I was just about to let you go. I was going to let you go do whatever it is you got to do. But now I'm on this whole other thing. Would you say that an exorcism is an actual thing that works or doesn't? Like, it actually will affect the demon, like, when they do it?
I'm not sure it affects the demon so much as it simply makes the person so miserable that it's not a habitable environment.
Right. So it makes him no longer useful to the demon. It makes him no longer a place that the demon wants to be. Right. So because they're so friggin' nasty with their teeth all jagged and the fingernails missing and their guts all rotted.
Usually because of the malnourishment and mistreatment they've received at the hands of their exorcists. So it's like saying you're sick, so I'm going to torture you until you're better.
So basically, you could beat somebody to near death, and that would be an exorcism.
But I mean, you're still beating them to death. Sure, yeah. It's like and most exorcisms don't work. Most exorcisms have recurring instances afterwards. Most exorcisms, if you look, because they have a lot of public records of exorcisms, and they all take months or years, and a lot of them recur later, right? And so I would say that as a whole, exorcism is probably the least effective thing you can do.
So what is the most effective way to do it? Let's play devil's advocate here, no pun intended. Let's say I was somebody who wanted to help my friend who has a demon who is inhabiting them. We've all recognized that as the case, and he wants to get rid of that demon. Is there a way for people to do that?
Absolutely, right? So, again, like I said, I like to try to tailor my approaches so that they work if it's a psychological event or a spiritual one, right? So one way that we can do this is you make a pact with the demon, right? Or if you find yourself with the demon I kind of already assume that there has been a pact made. So one thing we try to do is figure out the terms of that pact, right? So once we figured out that there is a pact already, then we can use rituals to transmute the terms of that pact, right? So we can, once we've found the pact and we've treated it as a thing, we can take that thing and change it into another thing, right? So using rituals, you can change the terms of a pact, right? So if you find somebody who has a demon, you can get the demon's info, basically, use a ritual and change the terms of the pact, move the demon to another host, remove the demon entirely, willingly, right? Simply by a renegotiation of the terms. Now, so this works as a spiritual event because if the demon does respect pacts, then you can negotiate with them and you can negotiate them into a better situation. And they'll take a better situation over one where they don't really get to do anything cool, right? If it's just a psychological thing, if they're convinced enough that they have changed the terms of the pact, then they will stop manifesting nocebo effects of possession and they'll return to normal, right? So even if it's real or not real, what I suggest doing is codifying the pact into something that's a thing that is black and white that you can look at, and then actually changing what it says into something that's more amicable to what you want.
So that's pretty cool. That's a whole nother, that's something I never even considered, the possibility of like negotiating and see, we're not making a whole lot of jokes or like falling around sloppy drunk on this episode like we normally do. But we're learning something here.
Serious.
We actually have something here. We have, by the way, everyone's always like, we need an exorcism. No, there's an alternative. You can reach out to guys like Dave Outlandish at his Instagram page on, and we can try to figure something out where like maybe for $6.66 you can get get yourself a renegotiation of your contract.
And I want to tie you down to the bed and splash water on you. I won't do anything. So, you have to pay extra for that anyway. You have to go to a different district for that, I think. But
I do have a serious question.
Okay.
Are there anal probings in the demonic world?
Dude, I'm going to have to say that the G-spot isn't in the dude's butt for no reason. Okay?
There's the answers, man.
So how many fingers does it take?
How
many fingers in the case of demons would be as many as you can and probably more.
A couple hands.
Beyond human limits. Beyond human limitations.
There's your egregory demons. Doing the. But so does anybody else have any questions? Like I said, I know we've already been bothering you for an hour and a half now. I don't want to.
That's all I got, man.
It's been a good time. It's been a good time.
Yeah, we're glad to have you, man.
Hey, man. If you guys have any questions about anything, if you come across anything weird and you want to ask me, you guys know where you got my contact information. Hit me up.
We actually do hit up our Bigfoot guy all the time, so now you're our demon guy.
Demon guy.
We're always going to have to hit you up for questions like this.
Yeah, man. Anytime. Hit me up.
All right, Dave. Thanks again.
Thank you, bud.
Hey, thanks for having me, guys.
Take care, man. You too.
So that was pretty cool, right?
That was so informative, dude. I was like, I was so impressed because I kept thinking, oh, it's just gonna be some loony guy that's gonna be like, oh, I like talking in like demon voice, like, oh, I can summon the devil. Well, but he was so like well spoken and articulate, and like he wasn't like outlandish. Ironically, that was the thing.
Well, you know that
wasn't at all outlandish. Everything was logical. It was a totally logical approach to everything. His logical approach to it is what really got me, because some people, they're so like, this is what I believe and that's all there is, but he was like, look, this is what you believe or it's not what you believe, and then the way he presented it, like it was it's a theory, you know, and like theology, I guess you could say. And so you're going with it like, I mean, the way he spoke was like more educated than like educators. You know what I mean? Like, the guy didn't have a degree in anything, but he was well spoken, and it was interesting. It was really interesting. I was like expecting to be able to like make fun of him and joke, but I was more intrigued and I had questions. I was like, I want to know stuff now.
I know, and it's like all the questions that I wasn't even kidding when I said, oh, like I got so many. I'm trying to prioritize questions. Like I had so many because every time he would say something, every time he would answer one of my questions, he would create like 5 more in my head, and I'm like, oh. But I was like, no, that was what was cool about this guy was like, and I know I was dogging on him about his political answers, but that was it was more him playing the devil's advocate. Like, look, it could be. He's like, and I know he has a concrete belief of what it is, but I think what his thing was that he was sometimes it's hard to tell, and that's what's interesting about psychic abilities. I think is like a lot of these people. Like, there are probably way more psychics out there than they realize. You just don't know what it is when it enters your head. You know what I mean? Like,
that's what I got from it, is that you can't even really be too sure. Like, how do you know? You know, and you can't discount it. You can't really say that it is or it isn't. So, what way do you lean? It really is what it comes down to. Well, if you believe it, then it is. But if you don't believe it, then it isn't. You know, so you can't really say for sure. But, you know, I guess in his case, it's pretty amicable, especially with like the selling of spells, which is I mean, that's pretty cool, to be honest. I mean, the guy's a sorcerer. When it comes down to it, he's a legit Gandalf.
Yeah.
Gandalf. What's another sorcerer?
Dumbledore. Snape.
Yeah, Dumbledore. Even better.
But yeah, he's a modern day wizard, and that was. I wonder if he feels any kind of like cultural appropriation, like with video games that have mages and stuff.
Yeah. So I use Black Mage all the time when I play Final Fantasy. That's my go-to class.
And like you kept saying was, you expected like a nerdy guy who's like, I practice the dark arts, or like that's the kind of guy you expect.
That's exactly what I was expecting.
And then he comes like that guy on and like that guy who does those fake Satanism videos or whatever. Yeah. Like that's who you expect to show up as some weird guy. But then this guy shows up and he's like, yeah, man, I like to party, I like to hang out with my friends. And then, I just so happen to fucking around with my PDF encyclopedia library of spells and incantations. and I sell them on Instagram, which is like all those buzzwords are enough to make any millennial jizz their pants. And this guy is bringing...
Yeah, you know what, too, is I have a considerable amount more respect for somebody when they are able to verbalize themselves well. Like, he was so well-spoken. Like, he had a very good command of the English language, and that's enough for me to go, well, this guy knows what he's talking about because he knows words.
Do you think he'll send us a little pennant for our studios to make us successful?
I should. I don't know if I want a pennant in here of.
Don't be a chicken shit.
Dark. Of the dark arts.
Let him hang out.
Just you can put it over my desk.
Okay.
So on a scale of 1 to 5 Bigfoots,
what do we give this guy? Let's let V go first. He never gets to go first. What do you give this guy 1 to 5 Bigfoots?
Definitely a 5. He was so knowledgeable and like respectful, and he was candid. That made the conversation good. At the very least, he had knowledge of the subject. He had references. He had book references, and then he had exact like citations. It was great. That's a great guess, man. 5 Bigfoots for sure.
Dustin?
I go 5 because of the guy. He studies what he does. He's not full of it. For me, listening to him, I'm kind of confused with things more than I was going into it, but that's because I was so black and white to begin with.
And because he opened a lot of doors that you didn't know were in your house.
Yeah. Yeah. Now, to me, a lot of what he does is he works off your weaknesses anyways. Right? Like he was saying, like, if you're already weak-minded enough to think
he made a lot of references, he pointed to a lot of people saying, these are the type of people that are coming to see me anyways.
Yeah. So they're going to be, there's people that would do these things anyways. But I mean, it's obvious the guy does what he does, right? He knows what he's talking about. He's not making it up. He's not, just pulling it out of his butt. So, yeah, I mean...
He sells spells.
I mean, yeah. I mean... So, it would be cool to see it in action.
But that's the thing about it, I think, and he made that very clear, was it's not like Hollywood, where you're around a summoning star, and maybe there is situations where he does this, but I know he's not allowed to talk about certain. there's honor amongst Satan worshippers. They can't talk about certain things.
And let me say this:
like, you can't stand around a summoning circle and watch the devil himself appear in the flesh.
I'm not trying to be negative, Nancy. I'm a very religious person, right? So I am uncomfortable talking about demons in general.
Why? Are you uncomfortable talking about rabbits?
Yes.
It's because it's a taboo. I'm telling you.
Because of the taboo of it.
And that's what I'm saying. Like, if you're uncomfortable talking about rabbits, that's why I made the reference. There are rabbits. We know there are rabbits.
Yeah.
We've seen them. We know they exist. Even if you hadn't seen them, you've seen in cartoons, you've seen in movies, you've seen in documentaries, you've heard people talk about them, you've seen people draw them, you've seen pictures of them. That they exist. Yeah. So, like, as a very religious person, you have to know that demons exist.
Sure.
And so, I mean, but like V's saying, it is very taboo. Like, a lot of people, you're not allowed to talk about it because, for those reasons, like, people just tell you you're not allowed to talk about it.
I mean, what I find interesting about what he was saying is that it almost seems like you can get the same out of a demon as you can out of God.
Yeah. That's exactly how I took it too.
That's how I took it.
Yeah.
Look, just like as a religious person, if I'm in a dark place, right? So dealing with the stuff that you guys know that I dealt with a few months ago.
Sure.
I could on one hand say to God, please give me the power to get through this time of grief. Or I could say to a demon, take this grief away from me. I'll make a pact with you.
But then what?
You make such a valid point. I always tell Tom about this quote that I have, because I'm agnostic. I can't really say either way, whether it is or whether it isn't. And exactly the same. I went through this period where it's like, how do I get rid of this grief? And I have this saying now where it's my quote where I say, I once called out to God for help and he didn't answer. So I called out to the devil and asked for help and he didn't answer either. And so it kind of gives you that perspective of like, if you don't believe in it, then it's not gonna help you in any way.
Or even the money thing. Talk about the money thing. How many people pray to God because they want help financially? They don't get it. So then maybe that's where you can turn to demons. Because he almost talked to the point of, he made a comment where he said, "Oh, the demons are there. They don't necessarily want to hurt you. Sometimes they're trying to help you." Which is obviously, that's kind of a tongue-in-cheek comment. But nonetheless, to me, that's the biggest thing I took from it, is you can choose to go this route or this route, where God may not help you because you really don't need the help, but you could sell your soul to a demon
or whatever
and get the help.
But as far as what you said about approaching a demon and the demon granting it, what was that term? There was always the hard right or the easy wrong. You can take the hard right, or you can go to the easy wrong. You can contact a demon and the demon says, yeah, I'll hook you up.
Well, that's what, and here's my thought. Okay, you have people come in on heroin, alcoholics, and they say to you, man, my son died 2 months ago, and this is how I cope with it. Well, is it possible that what happened is that person, when their child died, they cried out to God for help, they didn't feel they had it, so then they cried out to the devil unknowingly, and now they stick a needle in their arm when they never would.
So, like you said, take this pain away. And I was going to correct you. I was going to say all these wishes that people make to demons, you got to be careful because it ends up being like the wish master.
Yeah.
Where you wish for something and then the worst possible scenario.
But you know what I'm saying? Like,
he said,
take this pain away, and then I go home and blow my brains out.
Yeah. But if they do, like I said, take away this pain. Well, next thing you know, you're sticking a needle in your arm. You would never do that.
Right, and that's what I'm saying about shooting yourself in the head.
Or you never rob that bank like you said, or you never kill yourself, or you would never blasey, but you do it now because you're being influenced now by a demon.
And especially if you're not sitting there saying, dear Dark Lord of the spirit
sure.
of Hades, please grant me this wish. If you're just saying, oh, I wish this pain would go away. And even just like with the language and how your deepest, darkest desires, it doesn't. You don't even have to say, I wish this pain would go away. You say, boy, it would be great if this pain would go away. Like, in reality, like, as far as language goes, if you trace that terminology back to its roots, all the way back to, Sumerian language, if you go all the way back, the very base version of what you just thought is, give me this, and that's all the demon needs to know, hey, that's me, Well, what about this, I wonder? Like, how many times have you stubbed your toe and it was like the most horrible pain and you were like, oh, I wish this pain would just go away.
And there's some demon like creeping in.
And then like, how many times have you accidentally accepted a demon into your heart that like
demon of the stub toe.
Yeah, like you stub your toe and all of a sudden the pain goes away because you wished it would go away, and now you're inhabited by like a super brave demon who's like, pain does not influence me. But like, I mean, what about people who are like, oh, I wish I didn't have to deal with such and such problem, and the next thing you know, then I'm going to take it down a notch because I think this affects all of us at least a little bit. How many times have you been like, I wish I didn't have to deal with this problem, and that was your like real deepest desire, that I wish I didn't have to deal with these financial problems that I'm going through. I wish I didn't have to deal with, that barking dog next door, or something silly, something silly. And then
that's the one right
and
there.
then all of a sudden you start to have a tumor growing inside of you.
Sure.
And next thing you know, you're diagnosed with cancer.
Yeah.
And now you no longer have to deal with those problems because you're dead.
Because you unknowingly made a pact with a demon.
That's so interesting.
So how many times...
That brings up a lot of things because that makes sense. Like, that's the resolution maybe the demon has is, well, if you don't want to deal with it, then I'll just get rid of you.
That's easy.
And you're thinking, oh, I'm talking about the dog, you idiot. Get rid of the dog. that's not his...
like, you bastard.
Plan.
Right. So, like, you have to be... That's so crazy because, like, you start to think about, like, how many times have I wished for something vaguely? And these demons have taken liberties. And they've decided They've just decided to do whatever it is they want to do because you were, vague in your desire to stop having pain in your paper cut, that you got, or so, whatever. And it's really because we're spoiled as a society, I think, in that, like, people, our ancestors, thousands of years ago, they get their arms lopped off and they're like, whatever, I got another one. But like now, we, like, our iPhone charger breaks and we're like, the end of the world, and like... It's like that interesting scenario where you get a magic lamp and you summon the genie and then you make these wishes, but because you're not very, very specific in what you want, they're not what you want. Like, I wish you'd bring my mom back to life, and then it's like a zombie. Yeah. It's like, oh my god, my mom's a zombie. So because you weren't really, really specific in your wish or whatever your desire is, they can kind of do what they want with it. So you just wanted a zombie, I thought. So my take on this guy. I mean, I've made it. I don't think it's any secret that I consider myself a conservative Christian. I believe in Christianity. I believe that dealing with demons and what this guy deals with in the dark arts and the sorcery and the magic and all that stuff. In dealing with those things, you are explicitly dealing with the occult and demons. Obviously with demonology, but like when you are practicing sorcery, your gift is coming from demons. Like so I mean there's no secret in knowing that this guy gains his power through what Christians and what Christianity would consider, like taboo, like you say, V, and something that we would personally never deal with. And like, I personally would never practice magic. I personally would never practice sorcery. I personally would never try to summon anything or any of those things, or practice telepathy or psychic abilities, because they all draw their power from demons and evil. Like, quote unquote, like evil, if I were to just sum it up in one word. So I personally would never do that. I respect anyone who does, just because I'm a guy who, and I feel like I've also made this very clear, anyone who wants to live their life a certain way, I respect that, as long as it doesn't affect me. And that's just part of being a, I'm proud to be an American. like that's what that comes from, and I believe that a lot of the original American values are systemic of Christian values, Judeo-Christian values, for that matter. And whether or not they are based on that or not, they fall in line and run parallel to one another. So I respect his right to do that. I respect his ability to do that. That's fine. As long as he never, as soon as he starts hexing me, then I'm going to be like, gosh dang it, Dave. That's when I'm going to have a problem. But I don't think it'll ever come to that, because I'm obviously, I'm not out here calling him, any kind of names or anything. If that's what he wants to do and that's how he wants to live his life, that's fine. And I think it's interesting that, and I'm glad he knows about it. If he were just some guy who's hopping on, and I always make that joke about hopping onto WikiHow, and
Yeah, but it's nice to have a guy for everything,
Right, and
a guy, a topic guy that you go, I don't know about this, we'll just call our guy.
And that's the thing about him, and I like that he does that, and I'm actually very happy that he does that he actually researched it, as opposed to going to WikiHow and looking up stuff, because he's actually he's learned. He knows, hey, I'm not gonna, and if he were just some guy on the internet, or just some guy that I know who happens to call upon whatever demon is convenient, like he looks up online and sees, oh, this demon is good at making for penis enhancement, but it turns out that demon that demon is actually a Haitian Lao that like he was talking about, or Loa. I'm sorry, I pronounce it wrong.
What was the other one? The Papua New Guinea?
No, Papa Legba. That's a voodoo. That's all voodoo stuff. So if he were just out there reaching out to all these Haitian voodoo Loas, and not knowing that they don't like white people, and that's dangerous. But what he's doing is, while I consider it dangerous from my perspective, he seems to know what he's doing, and I appreciate that. And the fact that he knows what he's doing, I feel comfortable with him doing that. Like, I would never expect anyone to call upon me to work, heavy equipment or heavy construction equipment, because I don't know what I'm doing. So, I would rather him do it than have Dustin do it, for instance. Just like, no offense, but I would rather you not go on to WikiHow and try to summon a demon, because by comparison, I would rather have Dave do it, because he at least has read up on it, and to great lengths, obviously, as he made it very clear that he knows what he's doing.
Sometimes I sit on the toilet and feel like I'm summoning a demon.
Well, the other day, after you left, I looked in there and saw that you summoned a demon in the toilet.
Actually, last weekend when we left, I was literally up all night summoning demons. In the toilet, dude, puking my brains out.
I did not puke. I passed out on the couch. And then I woke up the next morning hungover for the first time in years. But that being said about the guy, I believe everything that he does. I believe everything that he says to be 100% true. Even when he didn't want to answer the question, he gave us an answer. And it wasn't necessarily the answer we were looking for, or an answer that we were looking for instance. Like, if we were to say, when we asked him about certain specifics, and he wouldn't give them, but he gave us something.
Yeah, I noticed that.
And I appreciated that about him, and I understood why he didn't. And while I picked on him about giving political answers, there are obviously instances in his craft where you have to be political, as well as him being on a podcast and talking to, we joke about our one fan, but however many people end up listening, and it's more than one, but it's not
Yeah, two.
You know, yeah, now we're at 2. But as long as, you know, he's reaching out to an audience he doesn't know, so he doesn't want to alienate any particular part of the audience. And I liked that about him. I like that he never said, well, oh, so you're a Christian, you're wrong. You know, like, he never said, oh, you're agnostic, well, you're wrong. You know, because there's actually this, and I can tell you that this exists. And, you know, he never said anyone was wrong. He never said the Buddhist was wrong.
Scholarly approach is what it was.
And
that's why I respected the guys, because he took it. It was very like logical to me. You know.
So that being said, I mean, I pretty much gave you my answer just now with all that. But I mean, will he get all 3 5s from us? Yes, I will give him. I give him a 5, not even begrudgingly, not with any chagrin. I give him honestly a 5 because I believe him to have been honest. I believe him to, even if he wasn't being honest, or even if he is wrong, which I don't think he is, he gave it in such a way where he wasn't wrong. You know what I mean? Like,
You know what I kept thinking the whole time I heard him talk? I kept thinking, this guy's voice sounds just like Corey Feldman.
No.
But no, I give him a 5. We gave him all 5s. Is he the first? What did we give Matt Squatch? Did we give him all 5s? I don't know.
Yeah, we've given all of our guests 5s.
we've been very generous.
except for the one guest that we never aired their show.
Oh yeah. Yeah, but I mean we've been pretty generous. But I mean, I feel like I was gonna say it would be impossible to give Matt Squatch, anything other than a 5. Likewise, it would be impossible to give this guy anything less than 5, because even if this guy spoke, in which at great lengths he did, of just like, hey, this is here's what I know, and it's not like he was saying, it's not like he ever said, oh, well, one time I was inhabited by a demon.
Well,
like
that's...
It's not like he said, oh, I summoned Satan one time. He didn't make any really radical claims.
No, and that's why you give him a 5. Or even our alien abductee. We didn't get the guy that claimed to be abducted by aliens.
Because we truly believe that he believed
that happened to him. You know what I'm saying?
Whether or not we think that it happened, it's impossible for us to say, no, this isn't true. And clearly this guy has had some experiences. And if you look at it this way, too, clearly this guy has had some experiences to where, like at some point along the way, he was like, I'm really interested in demons, and then at some point he's like, this is bullshit. Like nothing has happened, and eventually you'd give that up. But this guy is still clearly very much into it. He's very well read on the topic. He's got stories. He's a guy. He's literally a professional sorcerer because he makes money doing sorcery.
He's no different than Matt Squatch, because Matt Squatch his expertise is Bigfoot, right?
Yeah.
You know what I think the actual professional term is, though, although we joke about sorcery, I think the actual professional term is occultist.
Yeah, okay. He has that on
So he's an occultist.
He has that on his LinkedIn, but I think occultist is more of a broad term, because you can be an occultist and be, into specifically the Ouija board. You could be a professional or a fortune teller. And this guy isn't a fortune teller. He even made that very clear, like, oh, well, I'm negative 5% psychic. Like, he knows that he's not all things occult, but he knows that, he knows his particular specification. Like, it would be like being a doctor and somebody saying, well, I'm a doctor. Well, and then somebody else saying, well, I'm a cardiologist. And somebody else saying, well, I'm a proctologist. I had to include proctologist, of course.
There's different practices.
So, yeah, within the occult, and which is why I think this guy has demonologist, occultist, and all those other things on his LinkedIn profile specifically, which is funny to me. Like, I always think of LinkedIn, and this has kind of opened my eyes a little bit more, I guess. People talk about, they use LinkedIn for, I'm a marketing manager, I'm a B2B consultant for marketing firms, I'm an accountant for a finance company, and then those are the job titles you expect to see on LinkedIn. And then you come across this guy who his is like wizard, and then like he is, and all of a sudden you're like, oh, I forgot. LinkedIn is a place where you can put like all your skills and trades and everything like that. So that kind of opened my eyes a little bit more to the practicality of wizardry and sorcery, and as it pertains to the modern world.
Pretty funny when you say
it does, because we don't see that very often. You know, he's honestly the first wizard I've ever talked to. I can say that as far as I know, he's the first wizard I've ever talked to.
Do you think he knows Harry Potter?
He might be Harry Potter. So 555.
There's like nothing funny about what we did today.